Hey, welcome to the Vineyard. Technically it's called the Gadsden Christian Fellowship. Let's see, it's called Vineyard Christian Fellowship of Gadsden. And then a few years ago, we were trying to, in the Vineyard movement, um, you have to kind of service mark things like the name Vineyard, just like you do having a Coke, or pretty soon everybody's not talking about Coca-Cola, they're talking about soft drinks, and they use the word Coke. And so the Vineyard churches, a lot of them, they asked us to change our name to put the Vineyard in the middle of the phrase, like the Baptists. So we went by Gadsden Vineyard Church, only to find out a few weeks ago that about a fourth of the vineyards were, they didn't want to change their name in their stationery, and so they stayed Vineyard Christian Fellowship and then with the city name after it. So, or sometimes you might see one called Vineyard Anaheim. So we go by the city name first, Gadsden Vineyard, and now we're confused with the Wills Creek Vineyards, a friend of ours out there in Duck Springs, and that no, they keep calling them and asking them when are their church services, and of course they don't have church services out at the vineyard, at the winery. So that's a little bit of a problem. This is our building. This is where we meet. This is we have a 10:30 service, and we meet here. We have different worship leaders, different worship teams, so you never know exactly what's going on, but that's kind of fun. So we have different people, and I'm going to move this little camera around and see if I can show you, and you see how that jerked around just then, just by me moving it. I'm just going to, wow, sorry. I'm going to show you around. You can see up on the ceiling, the tiles is a kind of a self-cleaning ceiling here. Every time we play the drums and the bass, the ceilings work to dislodge old paint samples. We know this building was built in 1894. We haven't ever researched to know exactly why it was built. It was built by one of the founding families here, and it has their name for, on the front you'll see meringue up at the top, for like we have Meringue Park in our city. And there's my computer showing right there, so I'll come up over it. This is pretty cool right here. So, one of the guys got a picture from the Shroud of Turin and took the top of it. And did you know that you can go to Walmart and have a rug made with your family photo or whatever? So he used the picture of what everybody believes to be Christ from the Shroud of Turin. If it wasn't, boy, it's a really good, interesting image there. So then we come on around and we'll show you some of this back in the back. And here we have our sound elevated a little bit. We need to work on that too, and there's always something to work on, isn't there, someplace. And there's sort of the front of the building. You can see the light coming in through the outside. And then we'll go right around a pole here. Wayne Wimpy painted for us, and Wayne's just a really good painter, and he's painted the walls and done different things to it. We have a place that we like to do communion each week right up here. And then you come around on our stage, and we're working on changing our projection so that we can project different things. We'd like to project visual worship and put it up. And next time maybe I'll take you down and to the other building. We have, you can go to the other side of the building. Well, it's hard to talk to walk, isn't it? You can, we have an opening between our two buildings that we've built. And the other building is 1901. So you can look at our buildings. We're across the street from the Variety Store, which used to be Nelson's. We're in the 400 block on Broad Street in the historic downtown Gadsden. And what else is there to say? We have a very casual style of worship. We don't pride ourselves in dressing down, street dressing, but we just like to be comfortable. And we used to, all of our worship was late in the afternoon because when I first started doing the church as a church planter, I really didn't like to sing rock and roll Christian music before noon. I just had trouble singing it. And so Michael Bynum had been watching over the morning, and a few years ago he went out to Rafa, and he just stayed right on out at the Rafa home where they do recovery work. And so I took over the morning service, so now we have a 10:30 service that doesn't always start on time, but there again, we're very laid back with things, and we really are a family, and we work on that, and we work on trying to put together all of our backgrounds and our histories, and come together with some agreed upon common ways of looking at things. So we like our culture. We like who we are. I started this as a church plant in 1985 from a word that people as Christians talk about words, but I was a member of Meadowbrook Church on Rainbow Drive, and been there for like 8 years. And this particular Sunday morning, I think it's the 16th of January 1983, I felt a real strong compulsion to go to the prayer room that we had. So I went to the prayer room, and enough to pray whatever you're going to pray. I don't remember what I prayed that day. I just prayed a while, and then I got still to kind of listen. I don't think I was really expecting to hear anything, but I heard this really loud thought. You know how you can have a thought that's so loud that if it was a little bit stronger, it'd probably be somebody else's voice, or it'd be something different. It was a sideways thought. The sideways thought said, I want you to start a church. And I said out loud, I can't pastor or preach, because I was an art teacher. And then a second thought came after that one, and the second thought was, that's not what I said. And then I had never experienced the glory of God. In the Old Testament, they talk about the glory of God, and the word means a weight, means a heaviness. And the only thing I'd ever had was I'd taken Valium when I had before I had my wisdom teeth out. And Valium kind of gives you sort of a really strong, restful feeling, and it takes away your nervousness before you're going to go have your teeth pulled and or cut out. And so that was a sensation I had. After these two phrases, this deep resting came on me, kind of. I felt like sort of like the gravity got heavier, that I was kind of like pushed down into the carpet for a minute, and then it lifted off. And all this took place in maybe a minute or less than a minute. And then you realize it's that, wow, I think God's spoken to me. What does that mean? Do I need to quit teaching? Do I need to go to seminary? What does that mean? Of course, naturally, it's kind of comical. I think sometimes God's got a really good sense of humor. He teaches us how to be funny. We're like Him, and that way we can communicate with Him and back and forth. And the pastor wasn't in town that week. Someone was visiting. None of the people in the church staff that I knew really well were in town, or were someplace else, or were home with their family, or on vacation. So that began a process of looking for, what does this mean? I went around and visited pastors. I visited with friends that were going to go off to seminary, and none of that seemed like the thing that I was supposed to do. I just had this phrase, I want you to start a church. So I wrote John Wimber eventually, and a few weeks later, and he wrote back and said, I'll be at the Belmont Church on Music Row in Nashville in April. Why don't you come see me? We'll go out afterwards. So I went into that meeting, and John was speaking to a conference, and the conference was a Church of Christ conference, and Church of Christ here in Alabama, a lot of them are non-instrumental. They go by the New Testament, and since they don't have instruments in that, they don't use any. And then other Church of Christ do have instruments. And so this is a mixture from both groups. Many people in three-piece suits, and we were dressed in kind of like this. And so coming in the door, it was like coming home to something. It was strange. They were singing As We Gather, an old Maranatha song, and I started crying. I bypassed my mind. The closest thing I can think of is like the movie E.T. when E.T. says home. It was like home. I watched John teach, and he was very Gary Best would call it supernaturally natural. He was John, but he was talking about spiritual things and spiritual experiences and people praying for the sick and different effects that had taken place. So by the time the evening was over, I told him, I said, I'm going to adopt you. I don't know if you want me, but I want you. And he was very gracious and started sending us teachings on cassettes back then. And the more I found out, the more compatible I knew I was. And so some of us went to California the summer of '84 to a course called MC 510, Signs and Wonders. It was a mission course taught at Fuller, and John was getting to teach it at his church. And so his church was just down the street from Disneyland. And we went there, and again, like, wow, this music was great. This worship music was so, put me in touch with God. I hadn't really experienced things like that yet to that level. And then everybody, it seemed, believed that God still came and did things. And it was very convincing, to the point that I came back home, and some of my friends said, let's just start meeting in the living room. So we started meeting in my living room, and we would worship, use our guitars, and then we would teach a little bit from Scripture, trying to learn to do things. We'd teach about spiritual gifts, I know, one year. And then we would kind of invite the Holy Spirit and sit in a big circle and kind of wait and see what he would do. And every week, just about, probably every week, it's hard to remember that far back, but things would happen. Somebody would be healed of something, or something would happen with different people. And that's how it started. And so we just kept on practicing these things. The more we picked up and learned, the more that we read, the more that we listened to cassettes, the more we talked with people, the more we went to conferences, the more we learned. So I'm certainly glad that God started that all those years ago. So I hope you come visit us sometime. If you're looking for a church, may I suggest that you date a church. You can date us. Oh, that'd be great. But you can date anyway. Just go try some churches for a few times and sit in on things. Sometimes the first time is not the time that really communicates to you. And then ask the Lord what he wants you to do. Sometimes you'll just know the first time. Sometimes you'll know later. But and then stay for a while, and then you'll know how long it is you're supposed to stay. It's just one church in the whole world anyway. Those that are alive and those that are with the Lord, and we meet in congregations all over the earth, and you become part of that church family. You're part of the great church family, but you become part of that local church family for ever how long the Lord wants you to be a part of that family. So if you're looking for God, bless you. Don't stop. He promises you that if you seek him, he'll let you find him. And he says if you ask, he'll answer. If you knock, he'll open. And so it's just, in the Greek, it means to keep on seeking, keep on asking, keep on knocking. It's not a one-time thing. So we'll be seeing you around.